Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. There we go. I can see you all now. Hello, my name is Michael. My pronouns are he, they. I am based in the UK. Brief visual description for anyone who needs it. I am a white male presenting person in my 30s. I've got stubble, brown quiffed hair, wearing a moss green jumper. Behind me, there's a bed with an orange blanket, some palm tree cushions, some atmospheric lighting, some plants that definitely battling to be alive. I don't think I've watered them since last time I was on here. So, yes, welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Those who have been here before, welcome back. As always, lovely to have you. To those who are new, welcome. Yeah, please do introduce yourself in the chat. My name is Michael. I'm the founder of We Create Space. For those who are here for the first time, we are a global non-profit platform, community, and collective of queer change makers. And we're on a mission to improve the lives of LGBTQ plus people around the world by connecting our communities and our allies with tools, with knowledge, and also a support network for personal growth, for self care, and also queer leadership. And we do that through shared experiences like this, through content creation, and also consultancy. And so today we are going to be continuing the conversation from last week on the topic of how to challenge executive leadership in support of growth and development of LGBTQ plus employees. We had so many great questions last week that we didn't get chance to answer that I quickly kind of jumped on asking Bachelor if they would return, and also I invited the wonderful Polo along too, who is also part of the We Create Space team, and they are both going to be delivering today's session. Elly's also here again on hand to help with any tech challenges or questions. So would you all like to introduce yourselves and say hello? Bachel, maybe come to you first.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Bachelor Cole. My pronouns are they, them. I'm based in San Francisco. A quick visual description. I have shortish, coiffed, salt and pepper hair, sitting in front of a gray sofa and three of my guitars, sitting under a red painting.
And do you want to
Hello.
introduce yourself a bit more,
Oh, sure.
Bachel? Yeah.
Sorry, it's been a morning already. Um, so I currently work at Aegon Zender, really focused on executive search and leadership advisory. After spending about a decade in management consulting with Carney, I think for me, a lot of the DEI work that I did at Carney, as I was sort of approaching the end of my career there, I thought, what do I want to, what do I want to do where I feel like I can make a strong impact? And for me, it was how can I connect a more diverse candidate slate to leadership opportunities? And then also, how do I help companies actually prepare themselves to help diverse candidates be successful and thrive once they enter the organization? And so this topic today is very close to my heart, and I'm excited to chat about it tomorrow with all of you.
Perfect. Thank you. Polo?
Hi, I'm Polo. Pronouns are they, them. I'm based in Toronto, originally from the UK. I work in the corporate sphere, so this is something that's a topic that's very close to my daily experiences. I attended the first session and got a lot out of it myself, so happy to be back here and helping out this time around. A visual description. I'm a white femme presenting non-binary person with a black corporate type jacket on today because it's cold. And my background is entirely unremarkable and gray because I'm currently packing to move house. So the chaos is hidden from behind me. And I have short black hair.
Awesome. Thank you. Elly?
Hello, I am Elly. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the community events and marketing manager at We Create Space. I am here to help out with any tech issues, like Michael said. If I can help with anybody, just drop me a message directly in the chat. And yeah, thank you.
Perfect. So we're going to actually just jump straight into the conversation today. And just to let everyone know, the Q&A function is still available. You can submit your questions through there or in the chat, however you wish. So I'll leave you to it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bachelor, yeah, I'm excited to hear more about what you were talking about last time. So maybe we can get started with a question about your own personal leadership journey. So what barriers have you faced within climbing the corporate ladder, but also how have your intersexual identities positively impacted that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Continuing the conversation from last time, and I really hope we get into some of the questions that were raised, because it is, when I look back, I'll be 42 in April. So, when I entered the workforce, I've seen quite a bit of change, right? In how open people feel, the conversations that are happening. But when I think back to when I started, I was always very open about my identity and who I am and where I come from. And I think, that comes from just having a really strong foundation in my identity and values as a Kashmiri person from home, right? And then as a queer person, and as you know, I mentioned I was originally out before I sort of processed my trans non-binary status as a lesbian, and with she, her pronouns, and then coming out again later. The obstacles and challenges that I faced, I think, were twofold. One is belonging, from a belonging perspective. And I say that not to just use the word of the day, which I know everybody's talking about belonging, but it really, career advancement is heavily dependent on leadership looking down and, oh, this person reminds me of a younger me, let me bring them into this opportunity. Well, I can tell you, especially now, I've never looked up at leadership and seen myself reflected. So I then had to almost fracture myself into bits and pieces so that I could mirror aspects of myself in leadership. So that person might say, oh, well, Bachel's into music, or Bachel's into sports, or Bachelor does this. And so it was very fracturing for me to try and get that visibility, which is why now in my 40s and having come out again and really embracing my trans identity, I'm having to just sort of accept that I am now that person, and how can I help, right? How can I help maybe have people look and see what I've been able to accomplish, and how can I help other people make that journey as well?
That's really well said, and it rings true to my own experience currently as well. If you can't look up and see someone, then you have to kind of make it a different perception, and it can be exhausting.
Yeah.
And kind of a question that leads really well into that is, as queer people, we are very good at playing roles and shape-shifting, as you're saying, and fragmenting ourselves, as you were saying, to fit in and be seen in a certain way. So how important is authenticity when it comes to managing up or challenging leadership? And can we remain true to ourselves? And how do we remain true to ourselves in those moments of conflict?
Mm-hmm. So I recognize that where I'm at today, I sit in a position of privilege as far as my ability to, have a job or have the financial support that I need, because that's really what it boils down to. Wherever you're at in your life, the key piece of your job is that this is how you support yourself, your family, your extended family, whatever it is. So knowing, having that safety in mind, right? And sort of having that recognition of how much am I able to risk based on what I need to survive is a game that you play as, you know, that I played as I came up through the ranks. And it's still something that I have to consider today. But here's why I think authenticity is just going to be increasingly critical. We were talking about this a little bit as we were getting ready for the panel this morning. And as a former communications exec, I know the power of the narrative, right? And so, you know, when you're trying to create a narrative that is fact-based and informs people, there's, you know, we're also facing this kind of shifting discussion of, you know, we've been saying for however many years, this is what our community needs. And now I've seen this like kind of groundswell over the last few years of, oh, well, come on, LGBTQ community, it's so much better for you now. Like, look at all these celebrities that exist. And, you know, and it's kind of, there's a feeling even amongst my most well-meaning friends that, oh, you guys have made it, you know, the LGBTQ plus community, like, oh, you guys have totally made it. Look, there's trans characters on TV, like you're fine. And I think that narrative is kind of what makes a lot of us in our, and especially in small organizations, feel like we don't have to put a lot of time into this. Like, your community is doing fine. You've got representation, you've got this and that. And so I think for each of us to be able to authentically share our experiences and let people know, no, we haven't solved for LGBTQ plus equity and inclusion. So let me tell you what it's like to live and to work and to operate in my shoes, right? And I think a lot of us still hide parts of ourselves because, you know, we're also kind of, this is another narrative that's happening in DEI spaces, which really concerns me, is this, well, don't make people feel uncomfortable. Don't make people feel judged. And so it's a mental disconnect for me to say, me living my life authentically and asking for equity and inclusion for me as I am could make someone feel judged if I'm calling out oppression. And it's a narrative that's really growing, you know. Don't raise issues. You're making people feel judged, you know. Let's focus on the positives. Let's do this, let's do that. And it's harmful. It's harmful, I think, for those of us who you know, want to truly be our authentic selves no matter where we're at.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there's a question from an anonymous attendee last time that fits very well into that line of thinking, is that how within a company do you deal with the pushback due to fear of negative press? For example, if there is a perception externally that that company is trying to be too woke or something like that, and it makes them hesitant to change, how would you suggest to deal with that?
Yeah, I remember that question, and it's really stuck with me because, you know, this concept of sort of performative allyship, right, or performative wokeness has been thrown around so much lately. I hear a lot of people are kind of hesitant or you know, there was I can't remember what I was watching, but it reminded me of that. Remember that? I don't know if it was global, but there was this like Pepsi ad that had like one of the Jenner Kardashians like with a flower and a Pepsi, and it was yeah. And so it was one of those things that was like, I'm sure incredibly well intentioned, but just like in delivery, people were like, you know. So for me, if an organization is going to take their foot off the gas on DEI efforts because of something external that they did, I would then reframe, because it's a great learning moment for the organization to know that the best way that you can let your employees and your customers, your consumers, your partners, your future employee, your candidates know that you're DEI focused isn't about a snappy ad campaign, right? It's in doing the work. So whatever industry you're in, have you done the hard work to explore what systemic bias you're perpetuating, right? And so it's like, yes, okay, let's, and especially for smaller companies that have limited resources, that can't do big splashy campaigns. And there have been some great ones, don't get me wrong. I remember seeing a Gillette ad about a father teaching his trans son how to shave. And like, yes, those give us all the warm and fuzzies, but it's the reframing of let's focus on doing the actual work and realizing that DEI isn't just about making your employees happy, but it's about actually eradicating systemic bias from our society. And that starts in our organizations and in our businesses.
Yeah, it's so true. It's far more complicated, I think, than a lot of people give it credit for. It's not just one thing. You have to do all of the work, not just one side.
Yeah.
And do you have an example of an executive team or someone that you've seen within a company being a better ally, for example, an active allyship that's really had an impact on you?
So I think there's a lot of companies out there that are doing things well. I can't say that I would 100% say, okay, this one organization has really cracked DEI in the way that I'd like to see it, which is, what I would really love to see? I would really love to see a major fashion brand or label just degender their line and just make clothes, make shirts, make dresses, make skirts, make shoes, make pants, different styles, but don't put a gender on it. And then even better, if don't create a gender neutral clothing line as if we as non-binary folks are we have a specific style. I've seen a lot of tie-dye used in gender neutral clothing lines. Polo, I don't know about you, but I don't wear a lot of tie-dye, so I don't know where it's coming from. But and I've seen some companies that where they're like, oh, our gender neutral line, and then they show a man and a woman of the same ethnicity wearing the outfit to show us that it's for men or women, that's actually not even the point of who we are as non-binary folks. So I think there are, I was, trying to think of a good example, and I hate that it's such a struggle to think of one, but, I will say that, yeah, I would have seen some great things done for employees. But I have yet to see, I'd love to see a financial services institution acknowledge that their redlining practices has limited certain communities from lending, from home loans, or from or to just show the different rates and the different percentages. And I'm sure there are good examples out there, but for me, we're still in that very defensive, celebratory, employee-focused place. And I think a lot of that is because of the talent market that's happening right now and the Great Resignation and all these things that you keep hearing about. So I'll keep thinking about it, Polo. If I can think of a good one, I'll share it.
Yeah, that works. It's a little bit sad that it's difficult to think of, but I completely understand. I think as well, if it, oh, you have a,
you just right. So one thing I'll share that I thought was very cool is MasterCard has the true name card line, which lets trans folks put their true name on the card, and so that it matches who they are. That to me was a big risk that they took in doing that, because of, you know, this whole, oh, I don't want to upset the whatever. But the true, I think it's called True Card or True Name initiative was, you know, was a powerful step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's an actual meaningful change. It's not just for show. It's actually making a difference to people's lives and not outing themselves every time they want to buy a coffee, for example. It's very important. And I do know of another company in financial services that does a lot of work behind the scenes, but not publicly. And that can also be another issue. Sometimes making these changes very public can also cheapen the impact that it has, because it becomes about marketing. So perhaps there's more going on that we just aren't familiar with. Right. Hopefully, I'm an optimist. But kind of linked to another question that I think is a really interesting one that came through from last time. So how do we reconcile working for a capitalist company that relies on other capitalist companies when we know that our communities and other marginalized communities can't be truly liberated within this system? What are your thoughts on that?
This is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I've worked in incredibly cishet white dominated, very conservative. I mean, I was actually, before graduating, I thought I was going to be in the field of law, and then I was in financial services, and then I was in consulting, and I'm still in professional services. And so I was talking to my wife and my sister about this in the, you know, we're all going to be disappointed by companies, because organizations and brands they're not people. They're actually not. I do believe that some of them are doing this for the right reasons, but capitalism forces everybody's looking at the bottom line, right? What's going to impact their sales? What's going to impact their costs? What's going to, and so, you know, with a lot of the stuff that's happening in the US around Spotify and Joe Rogan and boycotting and canceling subscriptions, and, you know, a lot, just, we were having this discussion around, wow, to stand up for ourselves and to be principled, we'd almost have to completely remove ourselves from society to not participate or engage with a company or a brand or a service that has likely done something negative to the LGBTQ plus community, or to our sibling communities, Black, Latinx, Hispanic, you know, et cetera, the people with disabilities. Like, there's to live and to only engage with organizations that have done well, I think would be incredibly difficult. And so then the other thing I said is, you know, I have had, you know, family obligations financially, like it's not just me supporting me, there's other people who count on me. And, you know, the debt that I had to incur to even have access to these opportunities. So, you know, I think it's hard not to engage with the capitalist machine. The question becomes, when you get in and you find success within that machine, do you change what you're saying, how you're saying it? And I'll say that, and I'm sure there's lots of people you could talk to who have experienced what I like to call full botchel, which is when I just really, like, you saw a little bit of it this morning, Polo, in the pre-brief. But no matter what space I've been in, I've found ways to safely, and I say safely very, very critically, but to safely stay true to my narrative, and not to soften, oh, I advanced now, so I'm going to toe the company line. And I don't want to call out the faults of the company I'm in. I think there's power in change from within. But there's steps you have to do to protect yourself and able to do that, right? And so this is why this kind of connects to the other point that we were talking about the multicultural coalitions and the different groups partnering together, because there are different views about the LGBTQ plus community in different groups. So I'm a member of the South Asian community. I know my parents continue to struggle with my identity as trans non-binary. It took them 20 years to come around to the fact that I was going to marry a woman. And then now this is like another journey that we're on. So that's why I think it's so powerful not to separate us. So then the South Asian group, if there is an LGBTQ plus member of that group, I remember not feeling 100% comfortable in that space, right? So if we're all together, we can kind of partner and learn from one another. And I think the world is going to have to come to a reckoning as far as the influence and the impact that capitalism has had on us as a society. But I don't think anyone should punish themselves for wanting something for themselves, to create a life and a home for themselves. They shouldn't deny themselves that. And if they can find a way to, engage with these machines and stay true to who they are and still advance causes that are important to them, I'm happy if anyone would want to reach out on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share how I've tried to do that. And I think organizations like We Create Space and other groups like this are incredibly powerful, because it brings us all together and we can share and learn from one another.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you gave me goosebumps a little bit there. That, yeah, we shouldn't be punishing ourselves, but we didn't invent capitalism. We just live in it. So of course we shouldn't punish ourselves for trying to be successful. And as long as we're not hurting people, then, you can try and make change. It's hard, but yes. And that kind of links into, in terms of the intersectional journeys within those spaces that you're talking about. So there is power difference, and this comes from a previous question as well. There's a power difference that exists even within like queer spaces and executive leadership, which is mostly white cishet males. How do you deal with that, and how do we change that as we move forward as well?
This, and we talked about this in the last session a little bit about the gatekeeping within our own community. And, because of the capitalist society and environment that we live in, as LGBTQ groups, or it was actually really just started earlier as just gay and lesbian, right? Back in the day. So you'll actually see a lot of organizations where their group is called like GALA or GALA, because it was just Gay and Lesbian Alliance back in the day for a long time. I know I'm dating myself here. I do this all the time, but I have these like old person moments from like back in the day. But, you go back and, leadership, CEOs are paying, you need to create a resource group for your gay and lesbian folks. And so when they'll look to their left and their right, their peers. So who had made it that far? Typically, in most cases, especially in the US, it was white men, gay white men, cisgender gay white men. And so they'd be named as the lead of the ERG, right? And I think a lot of that gatekeeping has remained, which is the one thing that I would continue to call out. And I did this in one-on-one conversations at first. And then I remember I have a very clear memory of a couple of meetings in which I had to literally pound my fist on the table to say, your experience is not my experience. Because there's, it's a human trait to say, oh, but I'm being treated well. If you're not being treated well, what are you doing wrong, right? And so the way that I've tried to educate people in one-on-one conversations is, if I tell you something, right? If I tell you that I'm being treated a certain way by a peer in our organization, don't view that person through how they treat you. View that person through how they would treat me. And it seems really simple, but I think a lot of people forget that, okay, if I'm a cis white gay man, the privilege that they have engaging with executives and how they're treated as an equal and a peer. And so when someone brings them an issue as the head of the group, it's so hard for them to fathom that this person would be discriminatory because of how that person treats them. So it's really like, another thing, another practice, and another education point for allies is this whole topic of centering, right? So when something happens, it's a natural human tendency to center yourself in the situation, to wrap your mind around it. But when it comes to DEI and it comes to topics of advancing LGBTQ plus equality, it's really important for the dominant groups in our community to not center themselves, because if you're a gay cisgender white man, if you center yourself presuming that that is centering the rest of the LGBTQ plus, it's just not accurate. So you have to center each group, and each of the letters faces a different set of challenges and a different level of acceptance. And so I think that's a really powerful topic to raise with folks is, okay, and I'm going to say too, cisgender white lesbians too. So it's like, just recognize the privilege that comes with what part of our community you belong to. And I think there's a real discussion there about just helping people see the world through a different set of eyes.
Yeah, I think it can make people a little defensive at first to realize they might be doing what others have done to them. And to talk them around is an interesting journey.
Yeah,
sure.
and again, because I even feel myself, there's like a little voice in the back of my head that's like, okay, Bachelor, like tone it down. You don't want to make people feel bad. Don't make people feel bad. And then I remind myself that, I'm not judging someone for, how they're living their life. I'm not judging someone for who they are. But what I am trying to do is actually get people a little bit more okay with being uncomfortable. Like, these are all really uncomfortable topics. They're personal. There's a lot of passion. There's a lot of inequity. So it's an incredibly challenging space. We're all going to feel judged at points. We're all going to feel bad. We're all going to feel uncomfortable, discomfort, whatever you name it. But, that's kind of how we've lived our lives, right? And think about, you said, what's some of the positives of the intersexual identity? The growth that I've been able to experience. And I think the aperture of my worldview has just been expanded because I'm constantly not just thinking about myself, but I'm thinking about, other communities and who's sharing similar experiences. So I think there's a lot of value in being uncomfortable together. And so if you can set that a psychologically safe space to be uncomfortable and say, look, here's what you're going to feel, here's what's going to happen, but let's push through, because there's some really positive wins to gain by kind of going through it together.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I don't love the discomfort, but the approach, I think that's really, really powerful and awful at the same time, but necessarily awful. And that's a lot for you as well, and for other people trying to challenge out. What we're doing every day is tiring, and it can burn you out, and it does burn people out quite frequently. I experienced it last year. So how, considering that it requires a huge amount of energy, self-awareness, compassion, like what self-care tools do you find most helpful, and how do you look after your mental health?
Very proactively, which is new. I'll be honest, I didn't do it. I think when I came out as trans, non-binary in 2017, and really became a lot, there was something that flipped for me professionally, personally, and I realized, okay, you're kind of running on fumes right now. I recognized the impact that it was having on me and the people around me and who I had become. And so a combination of, I found a really great therapist who's someone that I can talk to, who's a professional who, can work through the anxiety bits and, all of the, it's almost just a grounding force of having this person that I can talk to weekly that has no idea who I am in my world, right? And so we meet. The other piece is keeping my immediate circle sort of better informed about what I'm going through. So my wife, my sister, some of my friends, and it's just, there's like there's a small circle of people who know me, who know the entirety of my journey, and who I can sort of be very open and honest with. And then realizing that I don't have to fix the entire world was a big one for me. I was Don Quixote lunging at windmills, trying to trying to make the entire world realize that the LGBTQ community is valid and we should be loved. And I'll tell you, that almost took me out, if I'm being honest. And I found myself just kind of disappearing as I kept fighting. So I said, you know what? It's not my job to fix the entire world, but let me be me. And if I can change one person here, one person there, one person, and it's kind of, I took a different approach rather than I have to solve it for everybody. I just have to be me, and I can make a difference individually, one-on-one or in small groups. And instead of trying to, eat the whole elephant, it just, you get into taking smaller bites out of the issue. And then the other piece is, there's a lot of us in this battle. So if you need to take a break and you need to just live life and pretend that there's no battles and everything's fine, and you're just going to go to the beach, or you're just going to do something or watch a movie, and you're going to take a break from fighting the good fight, do it. Take breaks. Like, I have pulled back from certain groups that I was in before and things that I was doing. Give yourself breaks. I know it feels like it's on all of our shoulders to carry this all of the time, but you have to take care of yourself, because we all want to be in it for the long haul,
Yeah, it's the power of having a strong community around you, that you can, even if you don't know the community directly, there's lots of people doing the work and taking a break. The world will not explode. I've had to talk myself through this one as well. If I take a step back and have a bath and don't think about it, the world will not explode. Everything is okay. It's very important. And just maybe a final question. Do you have any final thoughts on how we can change the face of the C-suite?
Yes. So this is something that, in part of my work that I'm doing now, it's a big topic. And I think a big part of it is there's going to have to be, we said this phrase earlier, sort of a bit of a tear down rebuild in recruiting processes and performance management. And, and I'll give you a couple of examples. So there's two things. One, how do we get more people into C-suite roles? But then at the same time, how do we make sure that they're getting into an organization that knows how to help them survive and thrive, right? So if you're a company that really wants diverse leadership, but you're not taking care of the elements around it, so you bring someone in and then you try to change them because you don't know how to assess what good looks like when good doesn't look like how you do it, then you're gonna be in this never-ending cycle of torture of, I want someone different, but I want them different and then to be just like me. And I think that's, so think about it from the very beginning to the very end, right? You're in these conversations about CV screening, right? Which for me, I think this just needs to go away, right? There's name bias, right? So there's been lots of studies about how same CV, same experience, someone's, if someone has their name and pronouns or in the US, there's a big issue, they're talking about Black sounding names. Say the rest of the CV could be the same, but this person without the pronouns or with the, the John Smith type name will get the callback, right? It's also understanding, education bias. So, understanding that just because someone went to an Ivy League school does not make them a better or smarter or whatever candidate. You don't know the circumstances around the education experience. The other thing is looking at someone's experience. So a lot of CXO roles are like, oh, well, I want someone who's been in the seat before. Well, guess what? Unfortunately, what you'll see in a lot of CVs of LGBTQ plus folks and people of color is we'll hit a ceiling. We'll hit some sort of glass ceiling and then we'll have to move. And so, it kind of creates 2-3 years or 4 or 5 years to VP and then move somewhere VP and then move somewhere VP. And so, I've even heard a client sort of say, well, that's not, this person couldn't advance. And it's like, well, let's talk to them. Let's find out, like, what's the case? And so there's a lot of obstacles in the path between getting a more diverse candidate slate into the C-suite. And then when you think about when you get those folks in, there's some awareness that has to happen around, how do I say this, but it's kind of like an LGBTQ plus person gets a CXO role, right? Or a Black person or a person of color or a person with disability. We have this much room to make a mistake before we're immediately said, oh, this was a mistake. This was a bad hire. Whereas I've seen other folks sort of fail upwards time and time again. And there's just a little, so there's a lot of work. Like if an organization really wants a diverse and inclusive leadership team, there's some real reckonings that has to be had about performance management and hiring practices and the culture. And I think one of the biggest things companies need to do is figure out what they're going to do about toxic employees. Um, I've left organizations because of individuals that I just knew were going to make my life miserable, and I had to be free, right? And so for me, it always comes down to that James Baldwin quote, which is, we can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist, right? So it's this whole, there's two sides, there's both sides. No, there's certain things that are just not a two-sided topic. And I think successfully diverse and inclusive leadership teams will have a hard time being successful in organizations where they let toxic people thrive.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've experienced similar, and yeah, completely agree. That's amazing. This was really interesting. Thank you for answering those questions. I've taken a lot out of it myself. So thank you very much. And I'll pass it back over to Michael now.
Yeah,
Thanks, Polo.
thank you so much, Polo and Bachel. Really, lots of food for thought there. I really appreciate you taking the time just to go through those and yeah, add some extra clarity around certain things. So, as Bashal said, if anyone would like to speak into any of those topics a bit more, you can contact them directly. We've also just shared some links in the chat. We've got some other free events coming up. So, yeah, do check those out. Otherwise, please enjoy the rest of your day, stay safe, and see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye bye.